I'm telling you how to get them stinky ass curl gas off your hands after y'all eat them. Get you a lemon. And you just wash your hand with the lemon, basically. Look, you show me that cake. You show me that cake. Put the monkey. You show me that cake. Look at that.
That car's riddled with bullets. Somebody shot into this car.
A car riddled with bullet holes sits in the front yard of a quiet suburban home. Inside, the bodies of 3 people, a mother, her 5-year-old son, and her boyfriend, remain motionless, their lives cut short in an instant. This isn't fiction. This is what greeted first responders in Birmingham's Echo Highlands neighborhood on July 13th, 2024. Have you ever wondered how quickly an ordinary evening can transform into a nightmare? How does the trajectory of multiple lives change forever with the pull of a trigger? The citizens of Birmingham confronted this harsh reality when Arkia Berry, her young son Landon Brooks, and Eric Ashley Jr. became victims of what investigators would later determine was a meticulously planned execution. The evening had started like any other summer night in Alabama. Temperatures remained high well after sunset, neighborhood children were enjoying extended daylight hours, and families settled into their evening routines. Nobody could have predicted that this ordinary night would soon be seared into the collective memory of an entire community. What makes this case particularly disturbing isn't just the brutality of the crime, it's the calculated nature of the attack. This wasn't a random act of violence or a robbery gone wrong. The precision of the shooting suggests something far more sinister. A targeted killing where the perpetrator knew exactly who they wanted dead. In the months that followed, investigators would unravel a complex web of connections, uncovering how 25-year-old Jacorian McGregor allegedly orchestrated this devastating act. But what drove someone to commit such a horrific crime? What invisible threads connected the shooter to his victims? And how did law enforcement ultimately track him down? The Birmingham triple homicide reveals not just the darkest capabilities of human nature, but also how a community refuses to be defined by tragedy. It's a story of lives cut short, justice pursued, and a city's determination to heal. If you value these real-life lessons that might one day save your life or someone you love, subscribe now to Crazy Story File. Hit that button to ensure you never miss these crucial stories that remind us vigilance isn't paranoia, it's protection. Arkia Berry embodied resilience. At 28, she had already weathered storms that would have broken many others. Growing up in Birmingham, she discovered her passion for hairstyling early, transforming it from creative outlet to career path. After graduating from A.H. Parker High School, she pursued cosmetology with singular focus, eventually building a loyal clientele who came as much for her warm spirit as her styling skills. Kia's social media showcased both her professional talents and personal triumphs. Her Instagram featured stunning hair transformations alongside candid moments with Landon, her pride and joy. Colleagues described her as someone who lit up rooms, a natural empath who remembered clients' stories and celebrated their milestones as if they were her own. In 2020, Keo faced devastating loss when Landon's father died unexpectedly. Instead of collapsing under grief, she channeled her energy into creating stability for her son. Working extended hours while maintaining an unwavering presence in Landon's life, she exemplified the quiet heroism of determined single mothers. Her sister would later tell investigators that Keo had recently begun to feel like she was finally getting ahead, building savings, planning a family vacation, and discussing opening her own salon. Friends noted that meeting Eric had brought a new dimension of happiness to Kia's life. After years of focusing solely on her son and career, she had allowed herself to open up to the possibility of partnership again. The relationship was still relatively new, but those close to her commented on the noticeable change in her demeanor, a lightness that hadn't been there before. Landon Brooks possessed wisdom beyond his 5 years. Teachers and coaches repeatedly used phrases like old soul and emotionally intelligent to describe him. Despite his young age, he understood nuance, showed remarkable empathy, and demonstrated an uncanny ability to sense when others felt sad or needed encouragement. On the football field with his Wahoma 5U team, Landon wasn't the biggest player, but his enthusiasm made him a coach favorite. He wore jersey number 7 with immense pride, modeling his playing style after professional athletes whose posters decorated his bedroom walls. His coach noted that Landon never missed practice, always arrived early and stayed late to help collect equipment. The bond between Landon and his mother transcended typical parent-child relationships. Neighbors frequently commented on their synchronized personalities, how they finished each other's sentences, shared the same distinctive laugh, and moved through the world as a united team. During school performances, Landon would scan the crowd until he found Kia's face, performing only for her. His kindergarten teacher described him as a child with a bright future, one tragically cut short before it could fully blossom. Eric Ashley Jr. was in the process of rewriting his life story when it abruptly ended. At 28, his past included nearly 3 years in federal prison on drug charges, an attempted murder allegation from his early 20s, and several other encounters with the criminal justice system. But close friends insist that recent years had brought profound change to Eric's outlook and priorities. After his release from prison, Eric secured steady employment at a local manufacturing plant. Colleagues described him as punctual, hard-working, and determined to prove himself reliable. His parole officer noted consistent compliance with all requirements and genuine efforts at rehabilitation. Though his relationship with Kia was relatively new, those who knew them saw two people helping each other heal from past wounds. Family members revealed that Eric had begun mentoring at-risk teens in his spare time, sharing his experiences as cautionary tales. He had recently spoken of returning to school to earn his GED. His mother would later tell reporters that Eric called the night before his death, expressing happiness about the direction his life was taking and his hopes for building a future with Kia and Landon. Echo Highlands presents a study in contrast, a neighborhood of modest single-family homes with well-kept yards just minutes from areas known for higher crime rates. Residents describe it as a place where everyone knows everyone, where children ride bikes freely and porch lights remain on until the last neighbor returns home safely. This sense of security made the events of July 13th even more shocking. The evening began unremarkably. Around 8:30 p.m., a neighborhood barbecue wrapped up 3 blocks from where the tragedy would unfold. Families strolled home in the lingering summer light, an ice cream truck made its final rounds, and sprinklers activated on automated timers. By all accounts, it was a quintessential summer evening in suburban Birmingham. At approximately 9:47 p.m., residents reported hearing what they initially mistook for fireworks, a rapid succession of loud cracks that echoed through the otherwise quiet streets. Within minutes, the first 911 calls reported a vehicle that had crashed into the front yard of a home on Indian Summer Drive. First responders arrived within 7 minutes to a scene one veteran officer would later describe as methodical devastation. The silver sedan had multiple bullet holes, concentrated on the driver's side and front windshield. The precision of the shots indicated the shooter stood at close range and fired deliberately into the vehicle. There were no signs of random spraying or panic firing. Each bullet found its intended target. Inside the vehicle, first responders discovered Kia in the driver's seat, Eric beside her, and Landon strapped into his car seat in the back. All 3 had sustained fatal gunshot wounds. The engine was still running, and the radio continued playing when officers arrived. A partially eaten meal from a local restaurant sat in the center console, suggesting the family had been returning from dinner when ambushed. Investigators would later determine from receipt timestamps that they had left the restaurant approximately 20 minutes before the shooting. The forensic evidence told a chilling story. Shell casings recovered at the scene indicated the shooter used a 9mm handgun and fired 11 rounds in total. The trajectory analysis revealed the perpetrator likely approached from the driver's side, firing first through the window at Kia, then moving around to shoot Eric, before finally targeting Landon. The methodical progression of the attack suggested both familiarity with the victims and a disturbing determination to leave no survivors. What struck investigators immediately was what was not taken. Kia's purse remained untouched on the passenger floor, containing cash and credit cards. Eric's wallet remained in his pocket, with several $100s inside. This wasn't robbery. The attack was personal. Have crimes like this touched your neighborhood? This wasn't a random act of violence that could strike anywhere. It was a calculated elimination of specific targets. Does knowing this difference make you feel safer, or does it raise more troubling questions about the nature of violence in our communities? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. As law enforcement established a perimeter around the crime scene, neighbors gathered in shocked clusters behind yellow police tape. One resident captured footage of a dark sedan speeding away immediately after the gunshots, providing investigators with their first tenuous lead. Another reported seeing a man in dark clothing walking purposefully toward Indian Summer Drive minutes before the shooting. These fragments would eventually form the foundation of a case against a killer whose motive remained elusive. The morning after the shooting, Birmingham's Homicide Division assembled a specialized task force. Led by veteran detective Marcus Reynolds, the team faced significant challenges from the outset. Despite the vehicle's multiple bullet impacts and shell casings recovered from the scene, initial forensic analysis yielded minimal leads. The recovered 9mm casings matched thousands of legally and illegally owned firearms throughout the region. Surveillance footage from nearby homes captured only fragments, a partial license plate, an indistinct silhouette, the flash of gunfire in the distance. Cell tower data showed numerous devices active in the area, but none immediately connected to potential suspects. The first 72 hours, typically crucial in homicide investigations, passed without major breakthroughs. Investigators interviewed over 50 people during the initial week: family members, neighbors, Kia's clients, Eric's co-workers, and Landinen's teachers. Each conversation added dimension to the victims' lives, but offered few clues about who might have targeted them. The team compiled a timeline of the family's final day, tracking their movements from morning routines through their evening meal at a local restaurant. Security footage confirmed they left the establishment at 9:23 p.m., placing their time of death approximately 30 minutes later. By August, the investigation had expanded to examine potential connections to Eric's past. His previous convictions suggested possible criminal associations, though he had maintained clean records since release. Investigators explored whether old rivalries or debts had resurfaced, but former associates consistently reported Eric had distanced himself from previous circles. Kia's life revealed no obvious threats, no stalkers, no contentious custody disputes, no significant conflict. The case seemed to stall through autumn, despite public appeals for information and a $25,000 0 reward offered by the mayor's office. Detective Reynolds later admitted this period tested the team's resolve. "We knew someone out there had information. The shooting was too calculated to have gone completely unnoticed." The breakthrough came unexpectedly in December, nearly 5 months after the murders. A routine firearms arrest in an unrelated case led to ballistics testing that matched a confiscated 9mm handgun to the shell casings from Echo Highlands. The weapon had been recovered from a known associate of Jacorian McGregor. When questioned, this individual revealed he had received the gun from McGregor shortly after the July shootings, with instructions to get rid of it, instructions he clearly failed to follow. Surveillance operations immediately targeted McGregor, tracking his movements and communications. Digital forensics specialists discovered his phone had pinged towers near Echo Highlands on the night of the murders, contradicting his initial alibi of being across town. Further investigation revealed McGregor had purchased the same model ammunition used in the shooting 3 days prior. In February 2025, police executed simultaneous warrants on McGregor's residence and vehicle. The search yielded compelling evidence: clothing matching witness descriptions, a second stolen firearm with similar ballistic properties, and GPS data showing his car in Echo Highlands at the time of the shooting. When confronted with this evidence, McGregor maintained his innocence, but offered inconsistent explanations for his whereabouts. Detective Reynolds described the arrest as methodical justice, the culmination of thousands of investigative hours across multiple agencies. The district attorney announced charges of 3 counts of capital murder, emphasizing the aggravating factor of a child victim. As McGregor was processed into the county detention center, crowds gathered outside the police headquarters, their silent vigil marking a community's first steps toward closure. What many found most disturbing was the emerging timeline suggesting premeditation. McGregor had allegedly conducted surveillance on the family for weeks, learning their routines and tracking their movements. Evidence suggested he had attempted to approach the family twice before, but aborted when conditions weren't ideal. This wasn't an impulsive act, but a calculated execution planned with disturbing patience. The question everyone keeps asking me is, did you notice something unusual in this story? The killer wasn't just targeting random victims, he was studying them, learning their patterns, waiting for the perfect moment. Have you ever noticed someone paying too much attention to your daily routine? Comment below with your thoughts on recognizing potential threats before they escalate. Jacorian Deshaun McGregor presented a puzzle to investigators. At 25, his criminal record showed a concerning progression. Juvenile citations for fighting and vandalism had evolved into adult charges for robbery and receiving stolen property. Yet people who knew him described someone who kept to himself, rather than a volatile personality prone to extreme violence. Born and raised in western Birmingham, McGregor came from a fractured home environment. His father had been absent since early childhood, and his mother struggled with substance dependency, leading to his placement in multiple foster homes during adolescence. Former teachers recalled a student of above-average intelligence who displayed occasional flashes of academic promise, interspersed with disciplinary issues and extended absences. Court records revealed McGregor's first adult arrest at 18 for a convenience store robbery, where he displayed but didn't discharge a firearm. He accepted a plea agreement resulting in 2 years of probation rather than jail time. This was followed by arrests for receiving stolen property and probation violations, resulting in brief incarcerations but no extended sentences. What concerned investigators was the apparent escalation from property crimes to targeted homicide without intermediate indicators. Criminologists consulted on the case noted this unusual progression, speculating that either McGregor had committed other violent acts that remained undetected, or some specific trigger had prompted this dramatic escalation. The question of motive became central to both the investigation and public understanding of the case. 3 primary theories emerged during pre-trial proceedings. The first centered on potential connections to Eric's past. Prosecutors suggested McGregor may have been settling old scores or responding to perceived betrayal from Eric's previous criminal associations. The second theory involved jealousy or rejection. Investigators uncovered evidence suggesting McGregor had briefly known Kia through mutual acquaintances and may have harbored unreciprocated interest. The third and most disturbing possibility was contract killing, that McGregor had been hired to eliminate Eric and simply eliminated witnesses. McGregor's digital footprint provided additional insights. His social media accounts displayed fascination with firearms and wealth indicators beyond his apparent means. Messages recovered from his devices revealed someone struggling with perceived disrespect and obsessing over status. One recovered text sent weeks before the shooting chillingly stated, "People think consequences don't exist anymore. They are wrong." Defense attorneys would later argue McGregor suffered from undiagnosed mental health conditions, pointing to childhood trauma and inconsistent behavioral health treatment. They painted him as a product of systemic failures, educational, social, and judicial. Prosecutors countered with evidence of calculation and clear intent, noting the extensive planning that preceded the murders. Perhaps most telling was McGregor's behavior following the arrest. Jail records documented no expressions of remorse during monitored communications. Instead, he appeared primarily concerned with his own legal situation, rather than the lives he allegedly ended. Psychological evaluations conducted before trial suggested antisocial tendencies and diminished empathy, traits consistent with someone capable of the methodical violence witnessed on Indian Summer Drive. As the case moved toward trial, McGregor became an enigmatic figure at the center of Birmingham's most discussed crime. A man whose actions demanded explanation yet defied simple understanding. His motives, whatever they ultimately proved to be, offered little comfort to a community grappling with senseless loss. The morning after the murders, spontaneous memorials appeared throughout Birmingham. At Wahuma Park, where Landon played football, teammates placed his jersey among growing piles of stuffed animals and handwritten notes. Outside the salon where Kia worked, clients and colleagues created a wall of photographs celebrating her life and artistry. The neighborhood entrance to Echo Highlands became adorned with ribbons in the victim's favorite colors: purple for Kia, blue for Landon, and red for Eric. Mayor Randall Woodfin addressed the city in a somber press conference 3 days after the shooting. "This tragedy strikes at the heart of who we are as a community," he stated. "When a mother and child can't return home safely, we have failed collectively, and we must respond collectively." He announced the formation of a specialized violent crime task force and increased funding for neighborhood watch programs across the city's most vulnerable areas. The funerals held the following week drew hundreds of mourners. Kia and Landon were memorialized together in a service where his football teammates formed an honor guard alongside her cosmetology school classmates. The presiding minister spoke of lives unfinished but fully lived, while calling for community healing rather than retribution. Eric's separate service 3 days later brought together family members alongside colleagues and recovery program participants who spoke of his recent efforts at personal transformation. Birmingham's response transcended typical post-tragedy patterns. Rather than fading from public consciousness, the case catalyzed sustained community action. Local artists created a 3-story mural depicting Kia styling hair while Landon played nearby, becoming a pilgrimage site for residents seeking meaning in the aftermath of violence. The City Council approved funding for additional streetlights and security cameras throughout Echo Highlands and similar neighborhoods. Perhaps most significant was the formation of the Berry Brooks Initiative, a coalition of community organizations addressing underlying factors contributing to violence. The group established mentorship programs targeting at-risk youth, expanded conflict resolution training in schools, and created neighborhood safety councils empowered to collaborate directly with law enforcement. Within 6 months, the initiative had secured over $1,200,000, 0 cents, in funding, and expanded to 15 neighborhoods beyond Echo Highlands. Faith communities played crucial roles in facilitating healing. Interfaith prayer vigils drew participants from diverse backgrounds, creating spaces for collective grief beyond traditional religious boundaries. One local pastor organized weekly walks for peace through areas affected by violence, with participation growing from dozens to hundreds over subsequent months. In schools across Birmingham, counselors developed age-appropriate ways to discuss the tragedy with students. Landon's kindergarten class created a kindness garden in his memory, planting flowers representing positive actions and commitments. Older students initiated anti-violence campaigns, producing podcasts and social media content promoting conflict resolution strategies. The arrest of Jacorian McGregor in February 2025 prompted mixed community reactions. While many expressed relief that justice was progressing, others questioned how preventable the tragedy might have been. Community forums examined how McGregor had moved through various systems, education, juvenile justice, adult courts, without effective intervention before violence escalated. 7 months after that fatal July night, Echo Highlands hosted a community resilience celebration, transforming the crime scene into an affirmation of community bonds. Residents shared meals, exchanged resources, and committed to sustaining heightened vigilance without surrendering to fear. As one resident told local news, "We refuse to be defined by a single night of violence when we've shared years of connection." Have you witnessed how tragedy can transform a community? Share this video if you believe in the power of collective healing. Your contribution helps spread awareness about how neighborhoods can reclaim their narrative after violence. Because the story doesn't end when the crime is solved. It continues with how we rebuild together. The Birmingham triple homicide reveals critical patterns that extend far beyond one tragic night in Alabama. Examining the case from multiple perspectives offers insights that might save lives in similar circumstances. First, recognize the warning signs of escalating behavior. McGregor's progression from property crimes to calculated murder didn't happen overnight. Records show at least 3 documented incidents where McGregor displayed increasing aggression toward others. Authority figures, social workers, and even acquaintances noted concerning behaviors yet lacked mechanisms to connect these observations across different systems. This fragmentation of information prevented effective intervention. Security experts point to several practical safety measures that might reduce vulnerability to targeted attacks. Varying your routes and routines makes predictable patterns harder to establish. Be conscious of social media posts that reveal regular locations and schedules. Install motion-activated lighting and doorbell cameras as affordable deterrents. Most importantly, trust intuition. The feeling that someone's attention feels unusual or threatening often precedes actual danger. The case highlights how systems designed to rehabilitate often fail to address underlying issues. McGregor cycled through juvenile facilities, probation, and brief incarcerations without accessing comprehensive mental health services or acquiring viable economic skills. His repeated weapons charges never triggered intensive intervention. Without addressing these gaps, similar trajectories will continue to unfold in communities nationwide. Transportation safety emerges as another critical factor. Victims are particularly vulnerable while entering or exiting vehicles, moments when awareness typically decreases and physical movement is constrained. Security consultants recommend scanning surroundings before approaching vehicles, keeping doors locked while driving, and parking in well-lit areas with multiple exit routes. Perhaps most significant is recognizing how community bonds function as protective factors. Neighborhoods with strong interpersonal connections report lower victimization rates overall. When residents communicate regularly, share information about unusual activities, and maintain collective vigilance, potential perpetrators lose the anonymity that facilitates targeting specific individuals. The case also demonstrates how trauma extends in concentric circles beyond immediate victims. Family members, neighbors, first responders, and even tangential connections experienced profound psychological impacts. Communities that acknowledge and address this collective trauma through formal and informal support systems recover more effectively than those expecting individuals to process grief in isolation. What safety measures do you practice daily? Like this video if you've implemented any of the strategies mentioned, and comment below with additional precautions you've found effective. Your experience might provide exactly the information someone else needs to stay safe. As Jacori and McGregor's trial approaches, scheduled for September 2025, the legal process continues to unfold. Prosecutors have announced they will seek the maximum penalty under Alabama law, while defense attorneys prepare arguments regarding McGregor's mental competency and childhood trauma. Whatever the outcome, 3 essential truths remain uncontested. 3 lives ended prematurely, countless others were forever altered, and a community confronted its vulnerability in profound ways. The legacies of Kier, Landin, and Eric transcend their tragic final moments. The Kier Berry Cosmetology Scholarship now enables young women from underserved communities to pursue careers in beauty industry entrepreneurship. Landin's jersey number 7 has been permanently retired by his youth football league, which established an annual sportsmanship award bearing his name. Eric's journey from incarceration toward redemption inspired a mentorship program connecting formerly incarcerated individuals with employment opportunities and support systems. Echo Highlands has transformed physically and culturally since that July night. Crime rates dropped 37% in the year following the murders, as neighborhood watch participation quadrupled. The once empty lot near the crime scene now houses a community garden where residents gather for monthly safety forums. Streets, once defined by individual households, now function as interconnected networks of mutual support. The Birmingham triple homicide reminds us that safety emerges not just from awareness of danger, but from nurturing connections that make communities resilient against violence. The most meaningful justice for Kier, Landin, and Eric doesn't solely rest in courtroom verdicts, but in how their stories influence the choices we make about community, vigilance, and collective care. Their lives, vibrant, complicated, and full of unrealized potential, continue to reverberate through a city determined to ensure their memories serve as catalysts for meaningful change, rather than merely statistics in the chronicle of urban violence. In this transformation from tragedy to purpose lies perhaps the only consolation possible when confronting such profound loss, that their stories might prevent similar heartbreak for others.